If you want to know about the Nibelheim incident, Sephiroth's departure to darkness, and everything in great detail that the games and the compilation couldn't get through, or OVAs, and you want to learn how, and you just want to read something, read a good book by reading M.J. Gallagher's The Nibelheim Incident. It has the full backstory. What's up, my Archfiends of Chaos? If you don't know who this is your King of the Night 57, Vincent VX Turk, and I'm here with another, what you call crackpot theory, or I wouldn't say crackpot theory, but this theory will make you think that I'm on something, because this is going to be on some some jumper cables, and some, you're going to think I'm almost high on some jumper cables and Zans when I get to this. Now, without further ado, let this lunatic here explain this theory. Now, President Shinra is an evil motherfucker. We all know that. But he has not gotten to the far as he did in Final Fantasy VII. Even with the terrible atrocities with Corel and stuff like that. Even President Shinra, there's actually things that President Shinra wouldn't be able to actually really do, because, you know, there's actually he'll go only so far into doing what he does. And this is where I think it's interesting. Now, Genesis wants the world to pay for making him the way he is. You know, he wanted to make the whole world pay for making him the way he is. So he wants to. He says if he has to degrade and go by, the world has to go by. Now, sure, it looks like Genesis in Crisis Core, he's learned a lot. He's learned that this is not the way to do that. But what if one clone didn't know that? What if one clone wasn't there when Zack defeated Genesis? And what if that clone turned to President Shinra? If the opposite could happen, if Lazard Durskesius could be turned into an Angeo clone, what if the opposite is possible? And what if the clone was smart enough with Professor Hollander's help? Now, there's another reason why Professor Hollander is a criminal, besides helping Genesis and Angeo, you know, two deserters. There's actually a good reason why Professor Hollander is a criminal. What if he helped with this plan? And what if they kidnapped the real President Shinra and replaced it with the fake Shinra? And the fake Shinra is a reverse clone of Genesis. Just like how it is with Lazar Dursius being an Angeo copy. The reverse could happen. But this would need President Shinra's body and DNA. So the real President Shinra is from Final Fantasy VII. The President Shinra Sr. is actually Genesis. Now, Jenova wanted her pieces back together. Now, Jenova, even though she's the one who turned it into Sephiroth. You know, because she could do that and kill most of Shinra employees and stab President Shinra in the back. Now, don't get me wrong, President Shinra was kind of responsible for, you know, all the funding, you know, Hojo's research, and Hojo's research is what caused her limbs to be dismembered from her body. So, but we're not going to go into that. This is actually a theory video. What if Jenova never liked Genesis or Angeo? And that's why, but with Angeo, since Angeo's a better person, he didn't get the latter. But Genesis got degraded because Jenova did not want Genesis to have anything. Considering, let's be honest, even though Sephiroth's a bad guy and he's evil, but no one was worse than Genesis. Genesis is the one who starts Sephiroth on a bad path by telling him he's a monster. Genesis was the one who got got Angeal to desert Soldier. Genesis is the one that got Zack to break his, faith in Soldier and all that other stuff. Genesis wanted to actually have some of Cloud's cells because of S cells that Cloud possess. Genesis also helped co-create Deep Ground and Dirge Cerberus, and the only person that knows about Deep Ground's existence is President Shinra. President Shinra knows of Deep Ground's existence and didn't brief his son. Now, his son was never part of the inner circle, and that is Scarlet, Heidegger, and the scientist Hojo. It was only those people who got briefed because they were in the they're the head of all the developments of Shinra. Now I think Palmer got a little wind of it, but Palmer don't understand all. It was only Scarlet, Heidegger, and Hojo. But President Shinra knew all this time. And the reason why that is, what if it's a possibility after Weiss and Nero brings Genesis to Deep Ground? The man called G. He never actually changed at all. He still got a new evil plan to end the world. And Dirge Cerberus is a final part of that. And that's why he manipulated Weiss to wanting to get Omega to do all that stuff. But before we're talking about Dirge Cerberus, this is where it's gonna get crazy. President Shinra was killed during Crisis Core, the original President Shinra. That was the president of the actual company. Now, his son doesn't know this because the Genesis clone disposed of President Shinra's body, using the money and funding and all that other stuff, by tricking people thinking he was the real thing. And because this Genesis copy did the reverse of the Angio copy with Lazard, what if it's possible that he was able to stay in President Shinra body forever until he died? And then Rufus Shinra thinks his old man actually died by the hands of Sephiroth, but not realizing that the Sephiroth Genova, I call her Genova Roth because that's pretty much what that is, where she takes the former Sephiroth, ended Genesis because she didn't want Genesis to actually have her legacy. She'd rather have Sephiroth because Sephiroth's evil, but Sephiroth has a reason to do what he does. Genesis is an overly emotional, unstable, bratty child. If you think of Genesis as any other fictional characters, I'd have to think Anakin from Star Wars. If one thing goes bad in Genesis's life, he's gonna fuck up the whole world. And Genova's like, oh, that's too much of a liability. No, I gotta nip this in the bud. President Shinra is the Genesis clone, and that's why President Shinra is a lot more eviler than normal, because he would at least try to cover up his evil. But when it came to destroying Avalanche and civilians in Midgard in his own city, his own civilians that probably got him to the power he has, his own civilians, even if they live in the slums, those are his own civilians. So why would President Shinra kill his own civilians to stop Avalanche? Because that's not really President Shinra. It's a Genesis copy. Why do you think he needs Eris and Red 13 to breed? To make a new ancient so he can steal cells from, so he can make himself live forever. Genesis found the knowledge of rebirth, according to Nero the Sable and Dirge Cerberus. But before he hasn't, the real Genesis is asleep in a cavern at the point of the events of Final Fantasy VII. And not mentioned ever again, considering that all his records are destroyed, so is Angeal's. But while the real Genesis is asleep in a cavern, the last clone of Genesis, which is President Shinra, is orchestrating all this chaos and destruction in the first part of Final Fantasy VII. If you follow me, sure, he would kill all the people in Corel and say it was and blame it on and blame it and say they were a rebel faction group and set their town, but he covered it up, just like he covered up the Nibelheim incident. But he never covered up the Midgar plate dropping on his own people. So if President Shinra is even further worse than he already is, chances are this is a Genesis clone. And this is why Genova would want him dead. And this is why he would ask Hojo to kidnap Aeris and breed her with Red 13. To take the cells for rebirth. The new Cetra that Genesis clone was thinking about, could work on the clone. And if it could work on the clone, then it could work on the original. When the Genesis got out of his slumber after it worked on the clone, he would hope that the fake President Shinra, which is the Genesis clone, would one day work on the real one, and the real one would be able to carry out his plan. Because the way I see it, he's still evil. As you see in Dirge Cerberus' secret ending, he picks up Vice's dead body and says, "Brother, we've got some work to do." And I know this sounds crazy, but think about it. If he's able to go further than he already was, and not even try to cover up the fact he destroyed a plate killing civilians. Now, this man does evil stuff, but he covers it up. This version of President Shinra doesn't, because this is Genesis's clone. I call this clone the Last Will. If the Last Will would have worked out, if Avalanche and Cloud would have been defeated once and for all, he would have had Aeris and Red 13 breed. They'd create a disgusting abomination, but the abomination would be killed to use cells to make the ultimate rebirth on the clone. Then the clone would go to the real Genesis with telepathic connection, and we'll go. Okay, this is getting. I'm sorry, getting distracted by this. Goes through the cavern where Genesis is sleeping, and use that rebirth medicine on him, thus making Genesis immortal. Thus making Genesis immortal, and then ultimate rebirth and rebuilding of the world. So may the crystal be with you. Sorry if I was left in the middle. I know this is going to get hard to actually understand. And trust me, I try to keep up with it too. But it's something that was in my head, and I thought, maybe I could generate views by making this crazy theory. So may the crystal be with you. Also working on a Vincent Valentine web series, fan trailer at least. So please support JTS Productions if you want to see a Vincent Valentine, trailer, then hopefully one day it becomes a web series. So there's that too.